Hey guys, what is going on? It is Jay Campbell from the TRT Revolution and the Definitive Testosterone Replacement Therapy Manual, and I am joined by my great friends on our newly coined and named the Decoders of Truth podcast. I've got, of course, Gerald Clark, Rex Bear from the Leak Project, and Matthew LaCroix with his book, The Suppression of Us. And, of course, everybody knows Gerald's books. And I just want to make one message tonight for everybody that's watching. We've got a lot of people join our Facebook group now. So when you're watching this on YouTube, if you're not in that group, it's currently called Coders of Truth on Facebook. So we'll put a link to it, but we have a lot of people joining the group. It's the easiest way for you guys to connect with us and leave us your questions and your comments, and just, so we can keep the message resonating, so to speak, and vibrating on a week-to-week basis. So I'm going to jump in, not say hi to everybody. We have some deep questions that we're going to cover tonight, and Jerry's going to tackle the first one. And it's really, so how does one remove themselves from the matrix, aka the simulator, however you want to phrase it, and yet still put food on the table and have funds to purchase reading material? Basically, how do you survive and remove yourself from the simulation, Gerald?
Well, first of all, I don't think you can remove yourself from the simulation. You got to figure out how to operate differently and not violate your integrity. This is really what it comes down to, is when you switch over from a mission that's all about seeking money so that you can have a comfortable life, building a big house, putting a fence around it, sheltering yourself in so you feel secure at night and you're with your family. That's one path that most people have been told that's the American dream, or whatever dream from the country you're from, right? You get your little palatial setting where you feel comfortable and you can check out behind your secure wall and not deal with the simulator, right? That's what we all. So you ask somebody if they could get a bunch of money, what they would do. Oh, I'd go off to some remote place and go, well, this is why they want that, right? But the reality is, when you switch over to be on a spiritual path, in essence, you've given over complete will to serve yourself, to at least be somewhat open to serving others some percentage of your time. Usually it turns out to a small part that turns into almost all your time eventually, right? Service to others is what happens. Well, in that case, when you stop serving yourself, you become somewhat reliant on the community that you're serving to support you, which is an act of faith in and of itself.
Right.
And a lot of people in religious communities and churches would oftentimes get sponsorship by their community to go proselytize or do their mission or whatever it is the church wanted them to do, right? But they would be supported by their community to do that. So the question is, how do you get to the place where you're not trying to accumulate wealth to provide security for yourself? Because listen, security is one of our biggest issues in life. If we don't feel secure, then we end up at the low end of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Right.
You're only worried about the basic issues of survival. You're not thinking about the kind of stuff we're talking about on a show like this.
Exactly.
Okay, so those don't go hand in hand, all right? So how do you do this? Well, first of all, number one for me, you cannot live a spiritual life if you're a slave to someone else. So you gotta get rid of your debt. You cannot have debt. I don't care if that means you cannot have a phone, you cannot have everything everyone else has. Get rid of your debt. Otherwise, you're vulnerable to being manipulated by the system. So that's number one for me, is you got to do that. Okay, if that means paring down your big house to living within your means, better yet, live below your means so that you're not in that situation. So that's number one for me. And that means big life changes. And people don't like that. For me personally, it meant leaving $1 million home in Southern California, built in the first phase of the development, fully landscaped yard that was worth $50,000 in and of itself. You know how it is, Jay.
Yes.
To selling everything I had, staying on my path, not selling out to go back into a situation where I couldn't be at the same level of service to others as I had been before. If you go back in and enslave yourself, it's very, very hard to do and serve others. It's almost impossible.
Impossible, really.
It's very, very hard. So I'm glad you brought this question up. But incrementally, keep your day job and start serving others a little bit at a time as you can. Start a podcast, something that doesn't cost any money.
Exactly.
Right.
And start doing that. And eventually, I think the universe will reach out and initiate you and go, okay, this one is telling the truth. It's serving our purposes for the light. And we're going to find a place to make this one sustainable. And somehow, some way, out of an act of faith, that seems to happen. But it takes time, especially if you're self-published like you and I, Matt. You got to be able to be prepared to run a marathon. And but if you could stay in this mission and on your path for at least 2 or 3 years so you can bubble up beyond the noise and people find out about you, you'll garner support. And I've seen people talking about you, Matt, just that way, because I remember I was in the same place you were when I started. And it's been since 2003 or 2013 when I actually really started pushing my research. But the same thing's happening to you that happened to me, right? So these little steps you take, and you're working a day job, right? You're still going to your day.
Yeah,
it's a flexible day job. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna let you talk about it because you're just starting on this, and you're about to make some big changes, I think.
Yep. For sure, it's already happening.
It is interesting. It's kind of where you have that moment in your life where you decide, how am I going to spend my free time? Isn't that, I always like to bring that up, right? It's just kind of this telling thing that's still left in our society where we have these moments where we have free time where we're allowed to do whatever we want. And you begs the question, why isn't all our time free? So when I say free time is the time that you have available to yourself. What are you doing with it? Are you using it to expand yourself? Are you using it to connect to nature? Are you using it to better yourself, or are you using it to just continue to enslave for money, like Jerry was saying? Continuing to be on this rat wheel, the rat wheel of the matrix of money and the control of materialism in our society, the great illusion of us and what controls our perceptions of what is real. And so you must first break away from that, of the idea of what am I doing, spending my time on? Am I focusing on getting material items? Or, like Jerry also brought up the idea, we have to first get rid of our debt and all of these things, these material things that we're forced to pay for once we have, because we think that those are going to lead to happiness, and they only lead to more debt, which then leads to having to work more. And so get rid of all the debt you can, get to a comfortable, happy place, and then with that free time that you have, the open time that you're not focusing and dedicating to those other distractions, then take it to enhance yourself. It doesn't mean everyone has to become, the carrier of the torch of thought and then dedicate every single moment of their life to truth. But it means maybe they can become a really good person and help other people. Right. There are different levels and degrees of what this path has to be. People don't have to be fearful that everything in their life has to be thrown up in the air and it's all over with. It's more of decide for yourself what you want to do at this time while you're here, and what is actually going to better yourself. And I can tell you, once you do those things that enhance you, you'll feel that you're on that right path, because you get an energy boost from it just every time you do something good. That's why people always talk about it. You do something good, you feel good after, because there's a very good purpose behind that. We're supposed to do good things, not bad things.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Rex, are you there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed is I've had just about every job you can think of under the sun, literally. By the time I was 21, I probably had 30 different jobs. And
Awesome.
I would just get bored. I would do something for a week and I would lose my mind. So I would go on to other things. And it seems like when you finally find your stride and you hit your path, that's it. You'll know it, because the universe, like Gerald said, will start putting things right in front of you, and you can take advantage of those opportunities. And if you can find some way to have a win-win situation with everybody, that's the key. And get rid of, okay, well, I want to do good for just this group of people or that group of people. If you can find a way to help everybody, I think you look at somebody you don't like, and you're looking at another part of yourself, essentially. I mean, that's what I've come to the conclusion of with all the people that I've worked with in the past. When I can't stand a boss because he's just trying to give me that superiority complex and prove his might. Well, really, when you just kind of let that go and be like water and realize if we're all connected at some primordial level and we're looking at somebody else, we don't like them, well, that's just another part of ourselves, a part of our consciousness. So to let it go and just realize everybody's on their own path. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and just trying to learn as much as I can. But as much as we can break away from the system, I think the better, you know, if that's what you want to do. I mean, if you want to be a part of the system and live in the suburbs or the big city, hey, good for you. If you want to have a $4 million home in Southern California, that's awesome, and wear a Rolex and drive a Ferrari, hey, fantastic. If you want to be somebody that wants to make change in communities and buy up land and start building stuff off the grid and waking people up, that's great too. I think you just need to find what you enjoy and go after that, because then it's not working.
I agree.
Well
and Rex, well, very well said. Let me ask you, if you don't mind asking, because I mean, I already know this about Matt and Gerald, but is the majority, if not all of your income derived from all of your projects with the Leak project right now, or do you do other stuff or have other side income streams?
Yeah, there's other things that happen with, you know, I do all sorts of things. And being in public speaking, it's nice because you can make a lot of friends and acquaintances, meet a lot of people, go to different places around the world. And it's really good to make those personal relationships, because I've got acquaintances in literally just about every field or line of work you can think of. And they're personal relationships to where they'll listen to me and I'll listen to them. And I think if we can all do that, that's going to be that key ingredient to really making change that's going to have an impact long term. Otherwise, we're just going to be continuing to go inside of this narcissistic matrix, you know, posting everything on social media, not really talking to our friends in real life, just saying, hey, look at me, look what I can do.
I completely agree. It's all about collaboration.
Very well said.
It's not about competing. It's about collaboration.
I wanted to also add something to what Rex said. Something that really I was struggling with when I was going through structure work in Hawaii. I'll never forget this moment. I was in the back of a truck and we were riding up to Mount Waialeale. And there was a couple other people in the back of the vehicle. And I was a pretty type A person most of my life, I would have to say. Pretty competitive too. And we were having a conversation, I remember, and this person said something. And I remember automatically just saying something, you know how you do to connect with them, to come up, bring up a common topic. So you're talking the same subject with them, right? But when I heard myself say it, I heard myself kind of one-upping the person, right? And so the competitiveness was even showing up in my conversations, and I was not aware of it at the time. So finally, I got right with myself, and I decided, you know what? At some point, you've got to figure out the difference between a preference and a judgment.
Yeah.
And I could do it with widgets and objects and inanimate things. You know, I prefer this over that. But when I found myself doing it with humans, it felt like judgment to me.
Right.
Until I got to a place where I saw it from a frequency standpoint. And now I don't see preferring to work with this one over that one as a judgment. It's a preference to me based on my sense of frequency. And I don't think that's wrong.
That's awesome. That's profound.
You know what I'm saying? So I share that because, like you, and when you start getting more in the limelight, you're going to get requests from all over and every different way, just direction. And to decide what you want to do with your time and who you're going to do it with, that's your choice.
Right.
But you don't want others that don't get down selected right away to view that you're judging them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
Because it's not a judgment.
Well, let me just say real quick, like, you know, my mission parameters right now in life and how. So this question resonates very deeply with me. I haven't shared this with Rex. I've shared this with you guys in a previous call, but like, my book is like exploding right now. You know, it's the #1 book that's ever been written in its sphere right now. I have doctors that want to work with me. I have all of these people that want to, you know, work with me in the quote unquote simulator, and it's kind of harrowing for me because like I have all these different directions to go and all of this quote unquote, you know, fame and fortune that can be found behind it. And as I've told Gerald, and obviously Matt knows, and I'll tell you, Rex, like the deeper part of Jay Campbell is like being called to go to Tibet and like work with this Thankus woman who's legitimately, I'm not kidding you, like sending me messages. You know, she's at a 12-hour time difference or whatever where she's at. She's not in Tibet. She's in India.
Yeah, isn't she? She's in Dharamsala, India.
Dharamsala, India. She's 10 years into her seeking and doing this, you know, working with masters. And she's truly a mesmerizing individual if you see her posts and stuff like that. And it's like, it's very conflicting. But anyway, her and I have had conversations, and she said, you can't do what you want to do deep down spiritually because you're a father and you have children. And, you know, your children right now, because of their ages, come first, and just do what you're doing. Continue on your mission. So again, this statement and this question has very, very deeply resonates within me of what I should do. And so I'm glad that we're talking about it, because it does at times really, it affects me. And I sometimes go to bed at night thinking, like, what the hell am I doing? You know, I'm selling out because I'm so focused on making money and all these other things that come with where I'm going. But I think ultimately, and Gerald, you've said this to me, and Thankus has helped me, and her name's Marlene.
Yeah.
But she says, you just have to manifest the goodness and manifest the service to others. And as long as you manifest that, whatever you do, you will not be in service of self, and you will not have money or the pursuit of money as the primary focus of your life. And as long as it's not, you don't have to worry, because wherever you're going, you're going to help other people.
Yeah, and Jay, think about it this way. To be successful during this, you have to be good at the game, because it takes money to get through this life. So I don't see it as a sellout. I see it as, if you were doing this work with the book to be successful, but in your other spare time you're working on truth and trying to spread the message, why is that necessarily a bad thing? Because you're mastering the game on both aspects. I don't see that as a bad thing in any way.
Well, it may turn out that you start out that way and you keep one foot in your normal life. I did that too for a while. But as you get further and further along and you start getting traction, you're going to see that keeping a foot in that space is really not serving you spiritually, but just feeding your resources may not be needed anymore. And I found actually another thing really interesting is when I had the least amount of money and the least amount of attachment, basically living in a travel trailer in a foreign country on the go. I mean, when you in the middle of a storm, just imagine, okay, how unattached you could feel to everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was at those points when you found deep with it and you learned to really connect with your higher self and get that experience of being guided by your inner truth, is when you had the least sense of security in the world. That's why I found it the strongest. And I was like, wow, no wonder people want to live like ascetics and give away all the material things and go, you know, be at the whims of nature, because that's where you connect with very deep forces that are guiding you.
Right.
You don't have to stay there forever, but recognize that happens in those circumstances. And I think it helps you not to be so attached to things that rust and thieves are going to destroy this reality, and try to focus on things that clearly have eternal archetypal lessons for your spirit. Right?
Right. Absolutely. Well said.
Right on.
Cool, man. Well, I'm glad we covered this question, because I know it's on the top of people's minds, and it's obviously it's very, very heavily resonating.
It's not, it's not easy.
No, it's really not. It's not, and I'm sure it'll come up. It'll come up in other times and stuff like that. But it kind of moves. So it kind of moves on to the next question, and that's the focus and the pursuit of money. So, you know, again, how does one best do it and still always serve others? You know, and before you guys answer, let me just preface this. Like, let's think of this like from an actor standpoint, right? Like, we all know actors, or we've seen actors who become so, and unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective, I run in some circles. I have some actors who are, you know, B-list, A-list friends. A couple guys are A-list friends or I'm associated with, and I see how some of the fame and the fortune, quote unquote, has changed them from a personality standpoint. And when you're aware, especially at the levels most of us are, and you see when a person is completely in service to self, you see how their circles are affected and how their behavior is affected. So I think that's a perfect point for people watching this show to understand what we're talking about. So how does one become successful, make a good amount of money, and still stay in service to others?
Yeah. I want to mention, to that question, the more successful someone is with the system, with money and success, like you mentioned, actors, and you know, the idea of being like an idol and worshipped almost, the more successful someone is, the harder it is for them to break out and wake up. And so those need to be looked at. You got to say at one point, are you playing the game? Did you play the game so much that you forgot what the whole purpose of it was all along, and kind of the distraction became the focus? And so we must kind of remember that it's a distraction, but we still have to perform the distraction, because that's the distraction's what is the model of everything in society. You know, the great distraction and illusion of money, and us, you know, fighting over these artificial numbers in some system that aren't even a real resource or anything. And so we can play the game to be successful and to find happiness, but not in a way to kind of chase materialism. A way to maybe find a peaceful, happy place where we can then expand ourselves. Right, Gerald?
Yeah, let me give you an example. And I've been all around the world, and I've found that happiness is absolutely uncorrelated with material gain.
I agree 100%.
And one of the best examples for me was while I was living on Kauai studying structural integration, there was a group of people, and you saw people doing pretty extreme things on their spiritual path in Hawaii. I don't know why. It's like going on Interstate 8 and landing in San Diego. You're at the end. Right. There's an ocean. You can't go any farther, and that's where you stop, right? Kind of like that.
I got you.
Well, the Nepali coastline was that in Kauai. And there was a group of people that had figured out that there's so much natural food growing on the island that if they had a way to make a fire and had a pot to cook something in, they could survive up off this little valley and off the Nepali coastline and not own land, not have a job, do nothing but just be. And the idea of doing that to most people that have a secure living and are going someplace and mean something.
Can't fathom it.
It is unfathomable, okay? But if you do it just for a little bit, you'll find out it's like living in a travel trailer.
I was about to say,
you find out you don't need all of that.
It's so freedom and taunting. Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah. So you take yourself wherever you go, and you learn to be whoever you are wherever you go, and you're not who you are because of what you got or what you're doing. You know, and when you finally get to that place, it changes a lot of things for you. It's part of the spirit.
Do you need this?
It's part of your spirit.
Right.
No.
So what? It's funny that you mentioned that, because the most cathartic / liberating experience of my life was when I not realized, I mean, I was going through the divorce, but I was downsizing from a 4,400 square foot home in Las Vegas in Red Rock Country Club, in a very ritzy part of Red Rock Country Club, Las Vegas. And my kids have been kidnapped from me, and I had been, you know, in jail and charged with like multiple, you know, completely fabricated charges, but multiple.
Hey, you're telling my story. This is not allowed.
Right. You could come. Yours can come right after this. But I remember, and Gerald, this is going to resonate so deeply with you. I remember being in my garage of this house, and I had just had the day before. I'd been on, you know, Craigslist. All the Craigslist bargain hunters had come through my house and just eviscerated everything for nothing. Dollars on, you know, peanuts, and there was not much left. But I was going through Christmas and Halloween decorations and whatever. And, you know, and there were sentimental value, right? Because it was tchotchkes and stuff from my kids and stuff like that. And I was just like, my God, I'm losing everything. And one of my really, really good friends, who's, I won't mention his name, but he's very, very well-to-do, very, very successful, lives in a $3 million house in Valencia, California. He just out of the blue, he just randomly texted me, and I said, hey, can we talk for a second? Can I call you? You know, because I was melting down. And when I told him what I was thinking, he was like, Jay, and I mean this in all sincerity, I will switch with you right now. Do you have any idea how lucky you are right now to be getting rid of all of that meaningless stuff? All of this stuff, right? This stuff that's house that you keep, like, you know, Jerry, like you said, these things that you hold on to that people feel they put meaning and substance to, that are literally stuff. It's like you're hoarding things that have no intrinsic value other than what you label them. And so he completely, paradigm shifted me and made me start thinking that this was a great start for me, because now I'm going to be, like you were saying, Gerald, in a small one-bedroom apartment, downsized with nothing other than my things and my clothing. And it's a fresh, clean start. But it took that, you know, for a guy living in a 7,000 or 8,000 square foot house with all these things, saying, dude, I will switch places with you.
Yeah, sometimes that's what it takes, is to have it all pulled out.
Yes.
So then you realize how enslaved you are to it.
Exactly. And that's what he said. He goes, Jay, this is the greatest thing that could ever happen to you. Embrace this opportunity.
Well, that is one of the downfalls of success, actually. Speaking of that, there's a tradition in India where Marlene lives, and that by the time men reach the age of 40, they're in certain traditions, they don't all do it, but they would give away everything that they have. And they knew that that was the period that they went on their spiritual path for.
Yeah.
So they had to force getting rid of all the materialism to truly connect with us. Now,
How awesome. So think about it. I was really 40 years old when that happened. No, I'm not kidding you. I really was. Symbolically, this was in 2011.
Well, look how far you've come in 5 years.
You're right. So, I mean, but think about that. That really was that part, whatever that's called in, you know, in Indian terms, you know, it's like giving up your dowry or whatever, giving up all the possessions. It's like that. Wow. That's deep. That's resonating with me right now, but that's probably what happened. Well,
that's probably why you want to go over to live the life of the masters of the Far East.
Maybe. Maybe. Well, Rex, you're still there. What are your thoughts, Rex?
I'll tell you, it's fascinating stuff. When you were bringing up earlier about how you really want to go over to, you said Tibet, right? Or was it India?
Right. I mean, India, Tibet, you know, work with, like Gerald said, ascended masters, train under them.
Well, it's funny you say that because I just got done working with somebody that actually went out to Tibet, and he was there for about 4 months, and he just went on this vision quest. He's into yoga and stuff like that. He said, man, the women out here are just beautiful, Rex. You got to come out here. I said, well, you know, I can't. But you know, he said, hey, man, it blew his mind. And he came back from there. And I could tell he was a changed man, but he wants to go there again. And as far as the material stuff, it's not really a big deal to him. And, you know, myself personally, do you own stuff or does stuff own you? It's great to have nice things, but do you want to have a whole bunch of stuff to where you can't keep track of it? I would much rather be out on at some nice peak in the mountains where it's 13,000 feet up, or doing something out in the open instead of worrying about a giant mortgage to take care of, you know, all these bills and issues. Because bills and issues, everybody has bills and issues, but it seems like people that, you know, okay, I got to get a bigger house, a bigger car, I got a bigger TV, and look, my neighbors, they just got a new yard, so my yard's got to be better than theirs, and they can't even keep up, and they're paying these bills that they really, even though they're making great money, it's tough for them to save enough to where if they lost their job 3 months down the road, they'd be toast financially.
There's no doubt, man.
I got a little golden nugget for you. Krista and I sat down one day and we tried to assess what are the key things that we need for us to be happy. And it was just a short list, It was like, okay, we need a room with a great view. You know, something inspiring when you look out.
Absolutely.
You know, because you spend a lot of time indoors as a human. So when you look out, you want to see something inspiring. You want to have a great mission. And you simply want to have enough resources to do that mission. You give me those, and I'm going to be happy.
So Gerald, those are mesmerizing. So define a great mission, you know, not for us, but for the audience. What defines a great mission?
Well, when you do something to serve others, generally you become like a free agent, and the universe will use you whenever it needs you. And when you find that out, it's like, oh God, you can tell you're being used right now because you're burning it at both ends. You don't know where this inspiration's coming, but you're putting it out there, and then all of a sudden you get a break and you get it put out to the pasture with Job for a little while, right? And when you end up on this path, that's what generally seems to happen. So if you were to say something to the effect of who I am is the possibility of possibilities, in other words, you're saying, forget my will, what I want, use me to service of others. And
don't you become
when you do that, you get everything you need, okay? When you or someone else, it comes back to you. So
I can't agree more. I mean, you're so right. I mean, you're a perfect example of that right now. You're being called by multiple different creatures and entities and people from all around everywhere. And it's like when you're pulled in so many different directions, sometimes you can get confused or as to what direction you go. But right now, I know you're just choosing to go, like you say, glide path, and wherever it feels natural.
But now you just said the exact key word is how do you know that you're doing your mission? Well, guess what? You're going to wake up in the morning. It's going to feel right. It's going to get you out of bed. If you're doing something that you can't even get out of bed in the morning, you got to change. You're on the wrong thing. Yeah. You're on the wrong thing.
And how many people, seriously, let's be honest, we'll go back to that whole 90-95% club. How many people truly wake up every morning inspired, excited about what their day encompasses? 5%, 10% tops?
20% at the most.
Maybe 5%.
Right.
Most people that are working absolutely don't want to work. They're working trying to figure out how to get out of it so they can have free time and do what they want.
I'm actually kind of amazed how positive people actually are doing the jobs that they do every day. It's to me, it's, you know, that grind of that rat race.
There's a lot of lithium in the drinking water.
Yeah. And there's a reason why it's called a rat race, because it's like being in a rat cage, just running around. In my book, The Illusion of Us, I mentioned how money materialism is kind of like, it's like the farmer leading all the sheep, you know, humanity, the collective of humanity, along with this carrot. And the carrot represents materialism and money, and they never actually get that carrot if they just leap around throughout the farm, right? And it's just because it's unobtainable. They're never going to get it because it's not real. It's the illusion of distracting them from the focus of their time. What are they going to spend their time that they have, this vital time in this current mortality? What are they going to do with it? What are they going to focus it on, right?
So it comes down to what Gerald and what, you know, all of us have discussed previously about, you know, it's our DNA. I mean, we've literally been tweaked and tuned to pursue, you know, these false constructs, you know, for whether it's because we're just miners or the primitive worker. And, you know, we've just evolved a little bit due to technology and obviously our time on Earth or our, you know, our evolution as a species. But it truly is all fascinating that some of us, you know, as we say, you know, can somewhat rise up out of the simulator to embrace, you know, whether it's entrepreneurialism, you know, breaking off the grid, connecting with nature, doing whatever it is that we do. I mean, obviously we're all like-minded people. That's why we're here. But you're right. There's so few of us.
I was thinking about that. And, you know, this gal, Marlene, said something that struck me on my YouTube channel. And I think you made a comment, Jay, something about there's just not enough of us. And she said, well, guess what? It only takes the square root of 1% of the population to reach the 100-monkey theorem.
Absolutely.
That's right. That's
And
right.
you know what I found myself doing? I had to go calculate 1% of 7 billion people and took the square root of it. And do you know what that number came out to be?
What was it?
It was only like just over 8,000. I was like, really?
And there's millions of us. We know
Yeah,
that.
so the idea that I don't know where she came up with that number to be the 100-monkey theorem, but I thought it was interesting. But I had to sit down and calculate it and go, well, what does that come out to? So,
well, I think let's see right now then for a second, because it goes into what we were talking about off the air about. So you just said, Matt, let's stay there, and then we'll tackle these other questions in a minute. But you're right. There are millions of us, and there's becoming even more millions of us by the day. By the hour.
mm-hmm.
And all of us can use the Facebook story, and Rex can talk about all the different people he interviews and all the kooks and the aware people and the seekers that are on his channel, because he has a massive audience. But it's truly amazing when you start talking to some of these people. And as I told these guys, and I'll share my story real quick, but a lot of people, because, you know, this is we're gaining notoriety from the group, from YouTube, whatever. A lot of people are coming out of my past now and reaching out to me and saying, wow, Jay, I had no idea that you were into this stuff, quote unquote, seeking alternative consciousness, you know, esoteric, all these things. And they're telling me stories, and all of them have the same root issue of, I just woke up one day and I was drawn to this. So let me ask you, Matt, to go first. And obviously, I know you wrote a little bit about this in your book, The Illusion of Us. But isn't it not true that people literally are waking up right now due to some sort of cosmic, you know, whether it's radiation, solar waves, whatever, but some sort of radiation that's emanating now from the universe, whether it's the orbital passage of Nibiru, whatever, people are just all of a sudden waking up, being tuned differently than they've been tuned all the rest of their previous lives.
You know, when I was doing this research and looking into all these things, one of the most fascinating aspects of this was the Mayan culture, you know, and of course inspired by Thoth the Atlantean. But the idea that they have pyramids that are built to basically show the levels of where consciousness would be at a certain point in time. So they could look out through the cosmos and say, we're going to look at the vibrational wobbles of the planets and where the zodiacal houses are lining up, and where maybe the sunspots and the energy is coming in. And we can actually time and predict when consciousness within the collective will reach a certain point. And that blew my mind, you know, thinking about that. So then you think to yourself, well, then you can actually predict consciousness. And then you look at work like Gerald's done, where we look into Nishida having this latent DNA aspect of where maybe when we reach the right point where it's a more peaceful society where there's more free will, but not full free will, then all of a sudden that latent DNA will activate and then we'll wake up, right? And so the right time is very important, because if it's not the right time, it's a bunch of steaks with people burning on it, like in the old.
I'm going to follow up with what you said, Matt, because you're exactly right. I started following Joseph Kalaman's work when he was decoding the Mayan calendar. And this led up to the understanding of the Tzolk'in calendar, which had 9 rows and 13 columns, 7 days and 6 nights of creation, right? So you're 13 there in the columns. And it was very interesting to me that that was a countdown calendar. It was issued starting from the Mayans' long count date of August the 11th, I believe it was, in 3013 BC. Well, if you knew that, that 9 frequencies were getting dispensed that caused levels of consciousness to unfold, probably specified by the lords of the 9 cycles, right? So whichever one's in charge of this cycle is in charge of how consciousness lines up to be available to be merged into the plane with another dimension of consciousness. And we're talking about the holographic reality according to thought. And I do have this diagram that I can talk to. So I correlated the 9 Mayan underworld frequencies in a blog on my website.
Right.
With the Tzolk'in calendar and these potential latent circuits that could come on in humans. I think those come on in a lifetime, though, when you're at this stage. Whereas when we get to the level of consciousness we are now, we're supposed to be at universal consciousness, right? In the Mayan calendar. That happened. And this was Ian Lungold's work. And he actually came up with a Gregorian mapping from the Mayan calendar to our current calendar so you could go back and forth, right? And he believed that we were going through the galactic center, and that the Mayan calendar actually stated that we would be going in October of 2011, not December 21st, 2012. But either way, if we do enter this place, the question comes up, A, how wide is the galactic center? How long does it take us to go through there? And at what point do we reach the apex of the energy that seems to be lighting up our antennas and waking people up?
There's no question it's happening right now.
Right. That was in my first book, and I believe it had everything to do with the differential in energy at the galactic center. Or this place where the solar system's migrating through this equatorial band of the galactic center.
Gerald, as smart as you are, I believe that your books came out in the timing that they came out. None of this is a coincidence.
No, it's not. I was as surprised by it as many other people were. But I was talking about stuff like this. I was an electronic circuits and systems designer, okay?
Right.
Building circuit boards and writing programs inside field programmable gate arrays, okay? What in the world am I doing?
You were the right man for the job, right?
It was in my path, and I was supposed to do it, and I can't explain it. So.
And so many people, though, so many people are reading your books now, and they resonate so deeply. And it's like I told everybody, and the people who have watched from the beginning of the show, when Rex wasn't on the first couple episodes, but I mean, when I was reading Gerald's second book, and of course I read Gerald's first book when it came out in the first 2 months. I'm a very big student of the Anunnaki, but it resonated so deep inside of me, in my chakras, in my energy field, and everything about me that I was telling everyone in my inner circle, guys, this is the book. I remember literally talking to Matt and say, Matt, you've got to read Gerald's second book. And I don't even think, Matt, you had even read Gerald's first book at that time when I first talked to you. And it was but
I have it though. I wouldn't.
No, I know. I'm saying it was so electrifying. It was so electrifying to people who are consciously aware and are seekers to read and absorb. It was just like you talk about the electrical capacitance, Gerald, and it was like every capacitor in my body was just supercharged, and I was just firing at the most highest resonant luminosity. And
when you experience that, that's how you know the information A is for you.
Right.
And B, watch out, because when you wake up to that level, generally you get given a new mission.
Yes.
A mission that's designed to serve.
There it is.
And there's no going back either.
And that mission comes from none other than the initiator himself. And you guys know who I'm talking about.
Mr. Fall.
Mr. Fall. That's his job.
There's
It's a
no
great
question.
torch. You get passed on. You get handed the torch.
That's right. Well, it turns out he's got a lot. I mean, he's got millions of people that are his agents, if you will.
Well, that's why it's called lights. They're just light. He just gives them.
Exactly.
That's all a torch is. It's just giving out light.
Exactly.
So, Rex, how crazy do you think we all are?
That's a great question. I think we're all crazy in our own right, which is a good thing, obviously. You know, if we were too sane, then it would get boring. But, you know, you're talking about the age of enlightenment and stuff like that. I really think what it boils down to, if you want to look at the bigger picture, is the age of Aquarius.
Yes.
Is what it really comes down to. And you look to the stars, and as above, so below. There's a connection from the largest to the smallest. And when you look at the age of Aquarius, what is that? Well, that's when people wake up. And that's what's happening right now. We're starting to realize how much nonsense and lies and deceit we've been force-fed our whole lives. And I'm actually going to be talking to somebody later tonight after this presentation, doing another show, because I saw an article recently that said in the state of, where's it at? Or no, it's a city in Pennsylvania. It's a county in Pennsylvania where they were going to require children to be vaccinated with the what is it? The Gardasil vaccine, essentially. Right. And so I said to myself, okay, this is funny because they tried this before. They made it mandatory in Texas. They, the governor passed an executive order making it mandatory, and now they've got dozens of multi-million-dollar lawsuits out because of all the side effects and just horrific things that happen to people injected with this. And then I thought, okay, so I'm going to do some research and find out if this is really true. And they are trying to pass this law in Pennsylvania, but they weren't able to, so now they're just pushing this PR campaign. And so I started doing some research. I looked at the actual inserts of these vaccines. Right. And the inserts, I mean, you can go directly to the manufacturers of these vaccines and read the inserts, and you're talking aluminum, formaldehyde.
Wow.
Then they did a placebo. They did a test against placebo. So they tried to skew the numbers, because if you think of a placebo, you typically think of something just like salt water or something that's going to have no effect. Well, what they put in the placebo was an aluminum adjuvant that's got a patent by Merck. So it's not a placebo.
Holy
the exact same aluminum adjuvant.
So there wouldn't be a placebo ever involved.
They're putting it in the placebo.
The same effect as the other one, yeah.
Wow.
So and I thought to myself, okay, so this blows my mind that this is mandatory. There's actually 3 states in America right now that it's mandatory to take the Gardasil vaccine. It's Rhode Island, Virginia, and Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow, Washington, D.C.
Let's take this a step further. Hold on. Let's take this a step further. I started doing research on every single vaccine that you're mandated to take in order to go to public school in most places. And every single vaccine that I looked at, except for a couple that were orally injected or orally taken. Administered, thank you. My mind's going a million miles right now here.
It's good, man. Keep it going.
Okay, so essentially, aluminum, formaldehyde, sorbitol.
Wow.
They've got latex on the tips of these needles, so when you inject it into the bloodstream, sometimes the latex will get into the blood.
Absolutely.
And you can read the side effects right open as day. Seizures, passing out. Make sure if you take this vaccine that you watch this person for 15 minutes because they might pass out.
Die.
The person that actually made or helped make that Gardasil vaccine came out on CBS and said, I wouldn't recommend this. You really need to know what you're giving your children. And so to make a long story short, almost every single vaccine that you give your baby or that you take has some type of adjuvant, not necessarily thimerosal, but aluminum or something else in there that's going to cause an immune response.
It's horrible.
Let's add the genetically modified blood. They have genetically modified DNA that they're adding in some of the hepatitis vaccines now. So welcome, everybody, to the New World Order.
So Rox, hold on. Let me ask you a really tough question then. This is fascinating. We're all big students and anti-vax, and there's a guy in the group, in the Facebook group. I think you guys saw his post today talking about he's panic-stricken. He's got his 3rd kid on the way, and he's in Virginia, and he knows about this.
I saw that.
So Rex, what is the big picture? And let me just go down. Let me put my reptilian shapeshifter hat on real quick, and let me ask you. I mean, if we're hybridized, if Dr. Dave Jacobs is right, and they've been tweaking us, and they're doing all these things. So, is the new stringent policy of tweaking the vaccinations and forcing them and mandating them to the people, what is the bigger picture goal? What is the ulterior motive of giving, humans or hybrids or whatever we are now, these high-risk drugs or medications? I mean, what is the long-term gain or end game goal for this?
Everything I'm about to say, folks, is just a conspiracy, so don't listen to anything.
No
Okay,
problem.
eugenics. Let's cause designer diseases. Let's go after somebody's nervous system. Let's put something in somebody's body where 10 years down the road, they're going to have a certain reaction where they're going to need new treatments to take care of what's going on in their body right now. Let's think of all the possibilities here. Now, you can look into, just read the inserts. That's all. Formaldehyde.
Right.
Thimerosal, that's the best part. That's the stuff that's probably, the genetically modified stuff they're putting in there. And then this most
least harmful
are made in China. So who knows what they're really putting in them, but they're good for you, folks.
So your take then, and Gerald, you're following this. Your take is this is just more eugenicism or eugenetic movement by the elites
and it's changing the DNA, like you said earlier.
Okay, right. Okay, so that's where I was going. So if it's tweaking our DNA, what is beyond the, again, we're putting our reptilian shape-shifting hat on. Is that really, isn't there something of that? What's your answer to that, Gerald?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that there's a culling going on, and that if you're not a willing, go along, be enslaved readily, down with the New World Order system, that you're the enemy. So they're basically trying to, vaccinate, dust, genetically modify your food source, whatever they can do to you to take away the gift that your creator gave you so that you can wake up, be a hero. They absolutely don't want that. They want you to be a dumbed down slave that's going to do exactly what you're told. And if you do anything other than that, you're unwanted. And they're going to look to get rid of you.
A detuned meat modem. How about that?
Let me throw in something real quick.
Oh.
I've got a friend that is a principal. And she said, because I brought up the vaccines one time, and I said, well, what about the mass studies that have proven that many people, their IQs actually have been lowered by at least 10 points after vaccines?
For sure.
And she said, she's a principal, and she goes, well, at least we don't have to worry about smallpox.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
It's almost like they know about it, but it's just like whatever because there's no disease at least, right?
Yeah.
Even though that's the total opposite's really true.
It's crazy.
So I think the long-term plan is they want to get rid of your aspirations to know about your creator. So the idea of this fun vax and getting rid of a genetic material that connects you back to the source, I think that's part of the gift that Enki gave us. It's
probably
being targeted to be removed, and I think
exactly.
Rex just did.
So it's really just part of it's really a bigger part and parcel of the transhumanism AI game to just meld us into a a subspecies of what we really were or created, before the Anunnaki tweaked us and dabbled in us and whatever, and then obviously all the other species, which lends us right into the next question. But I'm glad you brought that up, Rex, because I've also too been looking at that, and I, as a father of an 8 and a 6-year-old in California, and knowing that California has now mandated that you're not going to high school if you're not vaccinated with all these different things. That's something I have to look towards. I've got to wait till 7th grade now, so I've got a couple of years to figure things out, assuming we're all here still by then. But
let me throw something out here real quick for you,
Sure,
Jay, because you have kids. And I'm not telling anybody to or not to get a vaccine. You do what you want to do. If you read the inserts and if you actually read them,
there's no way you would.
Folks, there's a lot of words there that you might not understand. I had to actually Google about a quarter of the big words to find out what the actual term was. Right. And I'm telling you, they're telling you right there, seizures, neurological disorders.
There's no way if you read them, sorts of do it.
And then they'll say, okay, there's only 1% chance this person will get this. There's a 1% this, 1% that, 3% that, 4% over there, 5% over here. By the time you add it all up, it's practically everybody.
I was about to say 15% die.
Oh.
It's incredible, man. It's absolutely. Again, it's like Gerald just said. They're preying on the go along, get along mentality, the intimidation tactics. The high schools and the grade schools, all the people that work there are trained to tell the parents who abstain, oh, You can't do that. Your kids can't come into school. It's illegal. They tell them to say that. But now they've actually ruled in California, and again, I'm sure it's going to be all 50 states before long, that you can't get out. There's no abstention. There's no, abstaining for religious causes or beliefs. I mean, they're basically just forcing us now to be, as Gerald says, detuned meat modems with no heroic mission.
But I think something's going to happen, and I think something's going to happen relatively soon in our future.
Has to.
And I think we talk about how politics is going to evolve and how money is going to evolve, religion is going to evolve. Another large part of our society that's going to evolve is all aspects of medicine. And I think what's going to happen is the pharmaceutical industry with the money and the idea that it's based purely on financial gain and not health, and then how it's all artificial compounds that are detrimental, and then looking at things like vaccinations and looking at all these things, that entire aspect of medicine is going to collapse, and it's going to totally have to change. And so what we need to do when you're talking about everyone has kids and worrying about these mandatory situations, if everybody doesn't stand up and demand change, nothing's going to happen. So that's the only thing we really do.
Listen to this real quick. I didn't mean to interrupt, but listen to this real quick. I went to the website to see exactly what the vaccines that you need to get now, in order to go to public school, what they require you here. And, okay, here, where are we at here?
This is a big deal. This is a big deal. This is a big deal for Matt and Rex, because you guys both have kids that are in school. And listen, when this is all said and done, I want you guys to talk. We're going to talk about this, and we need to say, okay, let's go to that scenario. Now, what are you going to do?
Right. No, we're talking about
leave people hanging like this.
No, go ahead, Rex.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Listen to this real quick. This is just one shot. They want your babies to have multiple doses of this stuff.
I know.
Okay, here we go. Ingredients. 0.5 milliliter dose includes 1.5 milligrams of aluminum phosphate.
Wow.
100 micrograms of formaldehyde. That's just one shot directly into your bloodstream. There's nothing to filter that out.
And this is a newborn infant.
Right into your blood.
This is a newborn infant, by the way, who doesn't even have a built immunity system yet. It's insane.
That's one shot.
One shot. Yep.
One shot. I don't know. I'll tell you, after I read the ingredients that they put in these things, I don't know how more babies don't die. I don't know how we're here, to be honest with you, because
we've been well designed.
Statistically,
it's unbelievable.
Statistically, 7 to 10%, and that's the math from 30 years ago when they didn't have all of these new, crazy, mixes and as you said, different compounds and particulates and constituents. It's so much more dicey now. I mean, again, all we have to look at, guys, is the autism rise, the rise of autistic children. It is
and neurological disease too.
It's parabolically, statistically an impossibility unless this was not all engineered, as Gerald has said multiple times on this show. All of this has been engineered. Rex is right. They are preying off of uneducated people, which again, sheep will do as sheep will do, unaware.
Hey, what about the people that know about it, Jay, but they're in fear? They do it anyway.
I know they're in fear, and that's what I mean. The schools use the intimidation and the fear tactics to tell them, well, you don't have an option. Your kids can't go to school.
Let's go down this path for a minute.
Yep.
What are your options? You don't want your kids in an institution. They're telling you can't go unless you let them stick them with this crap. Well, obviously, there's only one answer. You cannot put your kids in that kind of situations. So you go, okay, well, I'm going to homeschool my kids and get them out, and I'm going to suffer financially because one of us is going to have to stay home. Right? This is what happens.
Yep.
Well, guess what? It's more important for you to cut back on the lifestyle that you're living and get those kids to a safe place where somebody's not telling them they got to be stuck. You're going to have to make radical changes in your life. You cannot go forward the way they offered you.
You cannot.
Find a community of people
vaccinated.
Find a community of people that you can culminate a teacher within them. Figure out a way to do this as a community. The NEA in America has to go. And the government has no business being in the education and the mind controlling of children. Okay? If you were to put kids into a circumstance and just simply fan the flame of what that child is capable of, irrespective of your agenda, you would be amazed at what would come out.
Yeah.
Because they'd all be doing their own missions and we'd all be getting what we're supposed to get.
I wish the guys that wrote the book, that Krista put into the War on Masculinity and Biological Systems, the sanctity of human blood. I wish those folks would come out and do a part 2 and update their book based on today's vaccinations, because it's true. I mean, it's exactly as Rex said. If people actually knew what was in this stuff, there would be riots. Nobody would even send their kids to public schools. The public school infrastructure would collapse overnight.
Well, let me ask you an obvious question of what I see as really disturbing to me. I'm watching people peacefully protesting in the streets all over the world, and police officers walking up with a chemical weapon and spraying it in their face, and nothing happens. Listen, I'm telling you, if somebody sprayed chemicals in my face, and I would not be calm. I'm telling you.
I've felt the effects of tear gas.
Listen,
We consider that normal?
That is not normal. Listen, if somebody does that to you, this is an act of war.
Right.
An act of war. So why are people taking it like roaches?
Okay, well, Gerald, to get back to what we've been saying, I mean, again, 95% of people have no energy balance. They have no alignment. Their chakras are blocked. They can't feel anything. They're so dumbed down. Anything that an authority figure, as Matt says, a savior, a leader tells them is the gospel. We can't react. I'll tell you guys this perfect example. Yesterday or Tuesday, when I was leaving at the airport in Cabo San Lucas, there's this silly giant, you have to walk into the Baja Cantina in the middle of the airport, which all the people I was with, the 4 people who were leaving, were eating. You have to walk all the way around, and there's this little tiny stair, and I climbed over it. Otherwise, it would have taken me 5 minutes to walk around. And this guy, this Mexican who works there, attacked me and said, "What are you doing, sir?" I'm like, "I'm going to my table. I've already sat down. I've ordered food. I'm paying at your establishment. You can't go through here. You're not allowed to do this. You got to follow the rules." And I looked at this guy and I was like, "You're a maniac. Who cares? Go back to your $5 an hour busboy job. Who cares about the rules? I'm just going to sit down at my table." But that's the point is that we're living in a society where everyone has been conditioned that the rules is what must be obeyed. It's not about critical thinking or what's the right thing to do or what's the logical, most sensible thing to do. It's you have to follow the rules. And the rules.
Hey, I got to throw something out here real quick. You got me wound up here. Now, I see people beat the piss out of each other over sporting events all the time. I watch people get in fights because of the certain college that they went to or their political beliefs.
Isn't that amazing?
Yet children are being poisoned at a mass scale, and that's okay. Now, check this out right here. This is one vaccine. This is the DTaP vaccine, okay? For the adjuvant, they use 33 milligrams of aluminum. I'm sorry, 0.33 milligrams of aluminum, polysorbate 80.
Toxic.
Wow.
Then they throw in 42.5 milligrams of sucrose, then 5 micrograms of formaldehyde, and then 50 micrograms of residual glutaraldehyde. That's another form of, it's like a lower formaldehyde. Oh, and here you go. Here's residual bovine serum albumin. And yeah, there you go. That's basically.
So, Gerald, there's your sucrose. You guys. There's your sucrose to destroy your chemoreceptors so that your insulin doesn't work, which we've already talked about.
Yeah. Well, we had a good discussion about that. As a matter of fact,
every chemical that they can give us to overwhelm our systems and make us function, make us dysfunctional, they give it to us.
Exactly.
Hey, I wanted to give a plug out to the guys who did the book on the forks over knives. A couple doctors wrote this book that Chris is reading right now.
It's an amazing book.
And she's had some people asking her about, I'm on this medication. I got to take this insulin. I'm a type 2 diabetic. Well, guess what, people? This research from this book, and I'd forgotten this, points to the fact if you adopt a plant-based diet, you can reverse type 2 diabetes.
You don't need insulin. We talked about it today. I did a podcast earlier today about the same thing on our, on the Ask Jim and Jay show. These doctors are telling people to eat sugary fruit and citrus fruits and take diabetes medication so they can stay hooked on their freaking insulin. It's a joke.
It is a joke.
They're just drug dealers, right? They're just drug dealing doctors.
Drug dealers. It's like they're ignorant of like biochemistry and basic human metabolism. I mean, it's incredible. It's like, dude, you cannot give someone who is insulin insensitive, already on metformin, already dependent on injecting insulin 2 or 3 times a day, sugar. I mean, are you retarded?
In 5 days of a diet change with this woman who's communicating with Krista,
she came off insulin.
Well, she's already down to half of her insulin dose and believes
she'll be off it in a month.
Yeah, I agree. I
mean, it's unbelievable, dude. I mean, that we could go. That's a whole nother subject. We'll talk another time. But I'm glad you brought it up. But again, doctors don't give a shit.
Forget it. If you need to become your own doctor with the information out there today.
Exactly.
You should not trust anybody to tell you about your health, but you.
Take control of your personalized health care. No doubt about it. Read my book. Read the books that we talk about. That's a great book, Forks Over Knives. There's no question. There are doctors out there that are not part of the system, but you do have to seek them out.
Exactly.
Wow.
So, yeah, Rex, I'm glad you brought the vaccination thing up because that's a really hot-button topic, and we really should spend as much time as we are on it. I mean, we talked about it on the show right before you got on. Vaccines are the biggest scam going. I mean, other than the nanites. You know, it really is disgusting how it's part and parcel. It's like it's immersed in our system now to the point that you can't even avoid it if you have children.
No.
Well, and how do you get around the fact that most people are so ignorant? When I say ignorant, I just mean uninformed.
Right.
You can't get around stupid either. So you combine the low IQ with people and their conditioning. And I'm not, there's some very intelligent people out there. I know that many people that listen to Gerald, Jay, Matthew, a lot of people listen to Leap Project. They're astute, man. I've talked to literally rocket scientists that listen to Leap Project. And Gerald Clark builds lasers. So he's a pretty smart guy. Matthew wrote some amazing books. And you're like the top of your field with testosterone replacement. You know how to, you look awesome at 45. Most people at 18 are eating tacos and they're 30 pounds over. Don't you? Literally. I mean, it's crazy. You look at this dilapidated idiocracy society and we need to start waking people up. So it's good when we can do these conversations, I think, because even though we've hit on some of the dark side of what's going on, we're also hitting on a lot of the light that Gerald brought up. Be a part of the light. Bring light into the darkness.
Be the change. I mean, you're right. I mean, we are giving actionable, engaging, real-life strategies that people can take home today, with their family, their friends, or even just people in their network. Because you're right. I mean, guys, I cannot stress it more. And then there's the people out there, and we all know them because we have them. They're our friends on our social networks and whatnot who go after us when we start talking bad stuff about vaccinations because they use the math. Vaccinations aren't harmless. I mean, vaccinations are evil. End of story. So this transitions into the next question, which I know a lot of people have begged us to answer, and it's going to go crazy. And Rex is going to have to put on his alien shapeshifter outfit. He might have to shapeshift himself, but
I already did.
The question is so how do you catalog the Dark Brothers? And again, the Dark Brothers, if you've read the Emerald Tablets, if you're familiar with any of the stuff that Thoth talks about, Thoth the Atlantean, then you know who the Dark Brothers are, the Dark Brotherhood. You know who the White Brotherhood is. So I want to talk about that. Who are the Dark Brothers? And I'll let Matt start, and all of us are going to talk, and I know Gerald has a lot to say about this matter. Now, listen, I don't want people watching the show to lose their minds when we're talking about this, but this is truly the crux of the battle between light and dark. I hate saying good versus evil because that's kind of the bullshit metaphor. It's light and dark, and light resonates as airy and light and easy, and dark resonates as heavy. This doesn't sense for those of us who are aware. So go ahead, Matt. You got the first thing.
The construct of this creator of all holographic design is based entirely on duality. You can see it in every aspect of almost every decision that's made, the extremes on every end. And just like that, it seems that life and the priorities of which side you focus on follow that duality as well. And this darker side of light, to counter light, there are alliances and beings throughout the galaxy and universe who have clearly chosen a darker side. In Star Wars, it's the path, the dark side, right. And all that is the idea of completely giving in to the idea of dominating others, using them as resources, taking control.
Service of self.
Yeah. So these beings and these alliances who have taken over various large swaths of the galaxy, whatever it is, they decided at one point, and what I've seen looking in the research, this dividing point where both human cultures and maybe the higher gods of the Anunnaki, there were these sides that were decided. And when I was looking through this research, in several different places, from the Emerald tablets you mentioned, all the way up through the ancient Sumerian writings, they talk about how there was this dark side, of this corrupted dark side that can kind of infuse and kind of polluted itself within humanity. Thoth the Atlantean talks about that, how there were these dark beings that were contacted from some kind of another realm, and they were allowed in. And that always fascinated me. But one of the things that's strange about it is, if you start looking at the evidence of those who have influenced us, you see overwhelming evidence of the Anunnaki. But you see very, very little on any of the Syrian or Orion darker side, which I believe they are. And from what I've researched and looked into, it's because they simply are masters of not being known.
Right.
They are like, they want to remain totally hidden. They want to be behind the scenes pulling the strings on everything.
Well, Thoth refers to them, and not to interrupt you, and I know Joe has a ton to talk about on this, but and I want you to get back, but Thoth refers to them as the serpent beings.
Yeah.
And says there is a word that can, get rid of the ruse or the shape shifting or the holographic face that they project. Right, Gerald?
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting part of Thoth's discussions. He never gave us the actual word to unmask their countenance, but if you think about the movie They Live, where they actually put sunglasses on and they can see them, I mean, that would be even better, right? So you can see them and them not know that who they are, because you're not saying anything to alert them, right?
So go back to Matt. But so let me just define this for the people that are watching this that don't have the understanding of this that we have. So all of you guys have seen all these Hollywood shows. They Live. Gerald just mentioned to him. V Part 2. It always stems somewhere somehow to draconians, dragons, reptilians, lizard people, dino people, reptoids, reptilians, whatever you want to call them. They're immersed in our in like the mythology of our human experience. And again, from Hollywood through mythology, through so many things. We have tablets. They found dino men in the cuneiform or buried in the pyramids and stuff like that. And obviously in Mexico too. And the Quetzalcoatl. There's so much stuff that has this lizard symbolism, this lizard man, lizard woman symbolism. So setting that up, go back, Matt, talk again still about these people.
The symbology is incredible throughout our culture, right? We have this idea of dragons and giants, and everyone thinks they're just myths and that they're not based on anything. And yet, if you look at star constellations, you see the idea that there's a constellation called Alpha Draconis.
Right.
And then wow, Draconis sounds a lot like dragon, doesn't it?
Right.
And all these other various things.
And draconian.
Yeah, exactly. And so if everything is based on this duality, then if mammals exist on the blue vibrational frequency at one end of the light spectrum, then reptiles would exist on the other. And that's what forms the duality, I think, in the universe, is this polarization of both sides, where one that has developed to have lost all connections to its emotional side and have then decided to focus it all on their intellectual side and the gain of themselves. They've left that path, and that's the dark path. That's the red vibrational conscious path. Whereas this blue path, I think it's the idea of the collaboration and furthering those around you. And so this battle of polarity and duality is what is ruling everything. And so who are these darker ones?
Right.
I want to read a quick quote that I have. There's something that Gerald has talked about many, many times called the anonymous Enki message. And it's just this message we've received, which has basically a message to humanity right now and kind of what's going on. And it has so many different aspects to it that are impossible to be somebody just writing it based on a fun joke, because there are terms that someone would have to know the most ancient aspect of ancient history to really understand terms that are just not used.
Right.
And in this message, there's this one part where he actually talks about who these darker beings are. And I wanted to read it. And it says, in this paragraph, it mentions, but deceivers who seek harm upon you have taken the roles in the upper echelons of your society.
Right.
Together with Marduk, one of the sons and one of the great rulers we talked about previous, have created alliances with beings not of Anunnaki nor of mankind. Your leaders have become vessels for these beings, and their bodies are operating not of their control. There is no empathy, reason, or negotiating with them, your leaders, because they are no longer retaining their human spirit. This is why all of your leaders appear to age so quickly. The life energy inside of them is quickly drained by these entities, and their life essence is removed and merged with the life essence of the dark ones. So, we really quickly look at Congress and on how we've had in this older in echelons of our society these kind of ancient,
why are there no term limits for our senators?
And they continue.
Why does all this occur?
And they continue to perpetuate this continuous mentality that never seems to change. Go ahead, Gerald. Talk about that.
I was going to say, Thoth also mentioned in Atlantis when these power-hungry individuals decided to open a portal to a lower dimension, to bring these beings into their space as part of a control. I think it was a control issue. Well, if that's the case, he also said that they're usually summoned where the rites and the blood are offered.
Yes.
You've got a ritual, involves blood, whether it's symbolic or not.
Yeah.
Those beings can be summoned. So I take you to Bohemian Grove.
Yes.
Anybody that's
Luciferianism.
Anybody that's involved with those rituals, guess what? They've offered up their body as vessels for these beings to occupy them, and that's what's going on.
The same thing with the pedophilia. It creates the same genetic memory from the blood, from the breaking of, the hymen or anal sex or any of that. All of that pheromonal, the encalphic, all those responses, those biological response mechanisms, all of that is doing that. You're right. It's stemming or it's bringing forth these, whatever you want to call them, you want you to define them as serpent beings, demonic forces, Luciferian, whatever. And you're right. And I know this sounds crazy, and Rex is going to attack me here in a second. I know Rex has a lot to talk about this because he always asks the question on millions of his shows. But I truly, deeply believe that they are in control of the majority of our leaders. I'll tell you one guy, every time I look at the guy, he never dies. He's been around forever. It's like something is possessing him, and I'm probably sure there is. But that guy, Henry Kissinger, for Christ's sake.
He's been talked about many times.
Looks like a dragon. Excuse my language. I'm trying to clean up my language, but I have so much passion by that. When I look at Henry Kissinger, he literally looks like a dragon in human form.
Well, look at how the leaders get their energy sapped just to correlate with what Enki is saying in that message. Like, look at Hillary Clinton. She can
look at Obama.
She can hardly walk up the steps.
Aged.
Look at So you know what? When you offer
humans, right?
When you offer yourself up to be used that way, you ought to be able to look to your peers and go, "Gosh, it's happening to them. Why would I do that? What is the allure to these people to want to sell their souls?"
So let me say something real quick, and then Rex jump in.
I don't get it.
Let me just say something real quick. We're gonna have a lot of people that are gonna watch this, and a lot of people who are like us in our group and aware this is gonna resonate, and they're gonna be blown away by what we're talking about. But the people that are not as aware, you're not ready yet, and it's no judgment of you. You're not aware yet. This doesn't resonate with you. You're not gonna understand what we're talking about, and you're gonna think we're crazy. But that's fine. It's okay. But when you get to a certain level, and you do see that stuff, and you've read as much of all of us have, and you've interviewed as many people who have talked about this in first person as Rex has heard. This is not crazy, guys. Okay? When you read Thoth's Emerald Tablets, and you read them every night, as Gerald says, and you make them a part of your life, and you understand, and the words like literally harmonize, and they resonate. That there's like a chord, like a resonant frequency that it just charges your body when you're reading it. This is not bullshit. This is legit. These beings are running things. They are inhabiting the souls or the life force of people in power on our planet.
Yeah.
This is not crazy. I am not crazy when I say this. I believe this.
Well, listen, the idea that humans are avatars, I want to bring that up one more time.
Right.
We are meat hosts that have energy that can animate us.
Yes.
It can be used, right?
If you haven't taken the responsibility to own those energy centers that control you, then guess what? There's 7 of them that other entities can walk in and control you at any level. So maybe you get your 5th chakra on, but guess what? There's still 2 above that.
Yes.
Entities can control you. So until you cast out all 7 demons like Jesus did to Mary Magdalene and wake up all your chakras, you're vulnerable.
And then one other thing I want to add, and then Rex, jump in. I know you have a lot to say. When you've done DMT, as have I, multiple times, I have seen these beings. Now, no, I have not had conversations or sat on a teeter-totter with them and talked to them about, the algebraic expressions of the universe, but I have seen these beings in my hurtling through the vastness of whatever. And they exist, and I cannot comprehend what they are, or where they are, or how they are, but Gerald is right, and we are just avatars in a simulation, and we are energy bodies, and these things can sap onto our energy. And I have friends, and all of you guys do, and Daniel Kelly could talk about this, and Matt, you had Daniel Kelly on your show. Daniel Kelly saw one of these beings when he was 26 years old, or 25 years of his life, in his room, standing at the foot of his bed, and it wanted into him. And he thought he was dreaming the whole thing, and he had no idea where he was at his place now where he's level of seeking. But that's what led him into this. He's like, Jay, I have seen this being. It made itself known to me. It sat at the foot of my bed. It was 8 feet tall, and it had, menacing looking at me. So the reality of that, people do see this. Again, depending on your expression, depending on your awareness levels and where you're at in your life, some people they manifest to. I remember listening to Jordan Maxwell, which Rex has had him on his show. And Jordan Maxwell is scared shitless at this stage of his life because he's been threatened by so many who knows type forces in the universe. But he has an amazing story about when he had one of these reptilian beings appear to him and basically say, you need to shut up or you're going to go missing. And that resonated so deeply with me. I was like 16 or 17 years old when I heard that story from him. I was listening. I think it was on a radio show way back, again, this is 20 plus years ago. But I'm telling you, we're not crazy. Rex, what do you have to say on this?
Certainly when you look at people that have a lot of control and you see the world today the way that it is, it makes you wonder, what is causing this? Could human beings create such havoc and chaos? And
I don't believe they can.
Why would they? Well, certainly I have never seen a reptilian shapeshifter. And if I have, I certainly don't remember it. So, I must have not had my Ray-Bans on when I got zapped and forget about it. But there's definitely a lot of information out there. And I've seen statues that are supposedly 7,000 years old approximately, right, of giant reptilian people.
Gargoyles.
And you can go, the gargoyles, and there's a lot of stuff out there that kind of points to the possibility. And if you look at dinosaurs and, when they supposedly died out, well, right, did they? And did they possibly evolve from dinosaurs? Did they create dinosaurs? There's so many possibilities. What I would say also is another possibility, and this would be a more rational one, but not at the same time, is what if this entire thing is somewhat of like a hoax in a sense to where maybe it's all humans and the people that are doing this stuff have certain security clearances or can basically get away with just about anything, and they blame it on the reptilian agenda or they blame it on these ancient relics. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, and I'm not saying either way. It just seems
what a segue, Rex.
Well, I agree with you, Rex. I didn't share real info.
I didn't share with him the email I sent you today, Jay, about stumbling across this article of this doctor who's a physicist and living in Florida that's accusing the telecom companies of allowing them to broadcast frequencies that are messing with humans, right? Did you see? Oh my God. So I went up and I saw this and I was like, I've been saying this for years, right? In my first book, I talked about entrainment.
Just proved it.
So, and I knew there were patent positions, but until I actually went and saw the patent myself and read through it, I'm like, okay, yeah. And this is what, that patent was dated 1992.
Rex, I think what you just hit is right. I think there's more disinfo than there is actual info. But along with what you also said, there's too many mentions. There's too many historical records of quote unquote reptilian, draconian, dragon. There's too much of it. And there's also a lot of oil companies, a lot of ancient old money,
Sinclair.
Exactly. Sinclair. I was
going to speak to those families after. Actually,
there's so much of that in our lineage of our, of our historical record, and again, much of our historical record would probably be.
Well, you know how Gerald just said maybe we're in a simulation, right? Okay, so let's look at that possibility. When you look at quantum physics, if you look at matter underneath an electron microscope, it would certainly appear that we're in some type of simulation.
Absolutely.
Well, okay, if that's the case, well, then how do we know any of it's what it is anymore? Maybe all that stuff that we're actually obtaining through our DNA is just coded information from when we were in a different time in a different place. And this whole thing could be just a grand illusion. Like when you bring up Jordan Maxwell, when he was on the show the other day, he was talking about how Steven Spielberg, well, he's got a friend that used to be friends. It's like everybody has a friend that's got a friend that's got a friend that's got an uncle. But anyway, he has a friend that is friends with Steven Spielberg or was. And one day he saw him off set. He was in a golf cart, essentially.
Oh, God, he shapeshifted.
Well, he tried to catch this guy tried to catch up with him, and he realized when he was about 15 feet behind him that Steven Spielberg didn't look all the way back, but he did partially. Didn't realize that he was there, just realized somebody was there. And then he looked up. Steven Spielberg supposedly looks up, and then these literally men in black essentially pop out of nowhere, like a hologram, pop out of nowhere. And there's his security guards are there all of a sudden. This guy finally catches up to the security guards, and he's like, "Hey, I'm friends with Steven. Let me talk to him." They're like, No, you need to go away. Go away.
Wow.
So the guy turns around. He's going away, and then he looks back, and they're gone. Just
totally
really, they're gone.
Totally believe it. You guys have seen the story that Dan Aykroyd has about his little black men.
He brought up the Dan Aykroyd story, yeah.
Because everything's based on something.
Dan Aykroyd story. I've watched the Dan Aykroyd story 20 times. I watched it within the first 6 months that it appeared on YouTube. I've actually met Dan Aykroyd in person about 12
that's
years
awesome,
ago.
man.
Really, he's one of my favorite actors.
Dan, I shared a private box suite when I worked. This is a long time ago. When I worked with Kelly Blue Book as a senior VP, a long time ago, at the racetrack in Fontana with Dan Aykroyd. And Dan Aykroyd is 100% legit, stand up, not controlled. He's on the side, he's on the light side. There's no doubt. And this is right when he was starting to have his experiences, and he told me about his show. And Rex, maybe you know this, but you guys know he produced a show, and they did 11 episodes, and it also was cut and completely wiped out from Sci-Fi Channel. And it was he went. This is way before Jesse Ventura's conspiracy show, and he had, according to what he told me, he had 11 episodes already wrapped in the hopper, produced and everything, that were mesmerizing, that was going to blow the roof off of the conspiracy about quote-unquote UFOs. This is, again, like literally 12 or 13 years ago, and they kiboshed it.
Yeah.
Show never saw the light.
Magic number 11.
Yeah, exactly. Never saw the light of day.
I'm not surprised about that at all.
So but back to the whole reptilians and the Dark Brotherhoods. Rex, great devil's advocate, statement, because he's probably right. But I think it resonates a little bit with me from the standpoint of what he said, and Gerald, speak to this about the waking up. What if it is true? What if we are all in a simulation, and now some of us, the 5% or the 10% of us that are waking up and are becoming aware, our chakras are tuned, our energy balance is there. What if we are waking up and we're finding out that we're not from here? That again, you're going to this Avalon Sol being, and we're realizing that, like, holy shit, we're on Earth, and where is Earth? We're lost. So there is some truth to what Rex is saying. There is a possibility that we are souls that have been brought here, as you guys have both said a million times, that Earth is a prison planet. And it's
now, Jay, real quick though, what happens if we wake up and then we look at ourselves underneath a microscope? Is it still going to look the same?
Right.
Well, this brings up the great
question, dude.
This brings up the great question about the three Matrix series. We started out with the first one. What is the Matrix? Number two, why are we in the Matrix? And number three, what's the way out? Is there a way out? Okay, you have to really ask yourself. In the third Matrix, Neo got to go meet the Grand System Architect.
Yeah.
In order to, but guess what? He had to be incorporated into the constructs of the Matrix. He never got out.
No.
The Matrix was reloaded, and they incorporated what they learned from him back into re-engineering a new form of the Matrix.
To maintain the simulation.
It doesn't, listen, I think the creator of all actually is running the top level simulation.
I agree with that.
And the two basic rules are time and the law of creation of matter. And then underneath that, I think the Anunnaki have gone to different planets, set up who knows what, a dodecahedron energy field around that planet so that they can control the consciousness and everything else. So there's simulations within simulations, essentially.
Exactly, and they're not even sure what they're part of. I really, when I look at this story so many times, because it's just this huge story of us coming from this primitive worker aspect. It just seems to me that the creator of all's matrix of what this construct is, those below them that think they're gods like Enlil, and those who think they're in control, they're actually just serving the greater plan all along.
Well, some of them know that, and as a matter of fact, if you go back to who the Dark Prince of Arulu is, I believe it's Enlil. So right. you had Enki and Enlil at the two top positions, one controlling the Light clan and one controlling the Dark clan.
Right.
And I think they may even at certain times
swap.
They may even swap, because this is part of the playing out the duality experience for the humans.
I think that's the
balance it, huh?
You gotta have creation and destruction.
I think that's the easiest way for quote unquote consciously aware people, which I consider all of us to be. I think that's the easiest way for us in our 3D constructs brains, the 1/5 the IQ of the Anunnaki, or 1/10 the IQ of the Anunnaki. The reality is that we can't quantify it based on our understanding of our 3D, construct. I mean, we really can, and that makes the most sense. But I know that when smart people come at me and say, well, wait a minute, if Enki and Thoth are light beings, then, how can they be swapping and playing the game? But it's like Gerald says, if it ultimately is a simulation, I still keep going back to Jason and the Argonauts.
No, right? Wonderful comparison. Yeah.
So here we are, we're on the chessboard, and Zeus is over here, and Apollo is over here. they're just moving the pieces back and forth, and we're the chimeras, and that's the best way to truly think about this. We're just the game to them.
Exactly. You remember the scene where Hera is discussing with the king who had invaded this kingdom, and he said, I did it on behalf of Zeus. Zeus told me to do it, right?
Yes.
She goes, no, you did it of your own will.
Right.
And then it comes down to the conversation of, well, why is this going on? Why are you guys monitoring us and treating us like pawns? Because
it can.
And she says, it's so that man will know himself and that the gods may know him. Exactly. So in other words, this is a lesson for you to figure out your state of awareness. And at the same time, it lets us who are monitoring this use you as the heroes in these different scenarios to be an example so we can convey messages to all of mankind. This is
right. But ultimately it's up to you. Right. But ultimately it's up to you to figure out your mission parameters.
Exactly. And this is by the way, I have to recommend to everybody who hasn't seen Jason and the Argonauts, watch the 1963.
I was going to say the original. The
1963 version where Jason is this doubting Thomas who doesn't even believe there are gods, right? Yeah. How many of us are there in the world today that are like that, right?
Yes.
So this movie is for all the Jasons in the world. And because of his doubting, but his willingness to be a hero, he had a code of belief and behavior that went beyond some doctrine from someone else. He was just a hero. He's a good guy, right? And,
go ahead, Rex.
And they recognized his archetype and used him to wake him up. I thought it was fantastic.
Totally fantastic. Clash of the Titans tried to pick up after that, and it was Harryhausen and Harry Hamlin. Yeah, it was the actor. But go ahead, Rex.
Oh, I just want to say it's fascinating, even if you go back 60 years and even more than that with film, and some of the movies that have been made, the screenplay, the scripts that were written, are timeless. Literally,
Totally.
you can look at it 70 years from now, 100 years from now, and the archetypes that were portrayed, you don't realize at the time. You can go back and watch it when you're in a different place in your life because of the information that you've obtained, and you'll get something completely different.
Hollywood is truly a cipher, as Matt said on his show last week, him and Jason and Daniel. And as we said in week 2, when we talked about Hollywood and their control of consciousness, I think this is perfect seed right now to move into the final question. And we can add some little things if we want a final comment. We've been on about 90 minutes, but the fourth question is, what is CERN really doing? Anybody want to take it first?
I'll jump in real quick.
Yeah, let Rex go.
And then I'll let you guys take over because I don't have a whole lot of information on CERN, but what I do have is even better.
Awesome.
Okay, so a family member of mine passed away a short while ago, and hopefully he's in a much better place now. But the person that I met after he passed is related to him. His name is Lance. And this gentleman actually made certain equipment and has certain patents that are involved with CERN and CERN-like technology. He actually worked at the facility in Texas before it was closed down.
Wow.
That is CERN. So I am going to have an interview with him
Awesome.
in just a few weeks because he lives out by Dallas.
Nice.
Basically family.
Very cool.
That's all I have.
Oh, man, you suck.
More coming soon. More coming soon. So stay tuned. Leakproject.com.
I'm going to do a couple of things that I've noticed about CERN. First of all, we can talk about scientifically about what they're doing in accelerating paired electrons and smashing each other. I don't think we need to go to that level of detail.
No, we don't need to talk particle physics.
Sounds awesome.
Well, I would love to sometime. And I'd also like to do a show and talk about what's going on with the laser interferometer at Caltech in measuring the gravity wave. That's right up my alley, okay? But anyway.
Bingo.
What I noticed about CERN was, first of all, it started out with the Fermi Lab in Chicago. This is where they first started doing underground particle.
Right.
And when I saw the one in Europe, I was like, wow, this one is really big. What's going on here? And the symbology kind of drew me in to pay a little closer attention to what they were up to. First of all, their logo is very disturbing with 666s.
Yes.
The fact that they've affiliated with Kali, the goddess of destruction, in their dance. And listen, there was a book that came out way back when that you guys may not be aware of. It was called Tao and the Dancing Wooly Masters, which was a discussion about the nature of particle physics.
Right.
Okay? And there was another one, In Search of Schrodinger's Cat, and several other books in the esoteric physics space that if you had read those and seen what they're doing at CERN, you'd go, wait a second, guys.
I know.
And so, bottom line for me is looking at the nature of energy and dimensions. I believe that dimensions are categorized by frequency, and that
I do too.
And that if you could put your brain on that frequency, you could experience a dimension shift, right? So I think they have discovered that through a high energy impact collision, that they can essentially create an energetic space that allows them to bridge over to other dimensions. And this was written about.
Absolutely. So are they opening wormholes strategically, or is it just a byproduct of what they're messing around with?
Well, I think it was a functional capability that they needed to have so they could move large resources on and off planets as part of their colonizing efforts.
Absolutely.
And I think and the fact that it's in Switzerland.
Exactly.
This tunnel ceremony, and it's all about gold. I think it all has to do about moving some transition metals off of this planet to another location that they want them.
Isn't it always that they give you kind of a story that is like a side purpose of what the real purpose is all along? So it's like, we're doing this for this reason, but this is only like a byproduct of what the actual purpose is.
I think
that ritual that Gerald's talking about, though, I mean, that was very uncovering. They showed a lot, and a
lot of esoteric metaphor.
Exactly. And I think what they're doing, they've taken the technology they discovered at CERN and they put it underground in a tunnel where you can't see it, just like the CERN's underground, where they can access it with vehicles, large trucks and whatever. Because I think they're actually using it to transport stuff. Truly. And it has to be such that they can move it from this dimension to another one, to another location. You know, through
That
a
is so
wormhole.
crazy to think about.
Well, listen, if the Anunnaki were here to get gold, and Nibiru might be coming back by, and they've amassed all this gold in Switzerland, and now they've got a tunnel where they go hide it away, and they do a crazy ceremony to tell you that the portal's opening, and these miners, look, put two and two together. They're here. They've been stealing your gold, and now they're taking it off planet before it gets.
But wouldn't it be wouldn't it be logical, Gerald? And I agree with all of that, of course.
I do too.
But wouldn't it be logical to think the Anunnaki being such an advanced race, and now we're 500,000 years later, and who knows where we are from a space-time standpoint? We're talking 3D linear years in age, but wouldn't it be responsible, I guess, to believe that they're everywhere? They've got camps and locations on every quote unquote habitable planet, within how many light years that they're able to travel dimensions.
Well, if the Anunnaki don't, I think some other race would. I think Star Wars is reality.
Of course, but I would assume that
Let's go a step
Anunnaki are
further.
everywhere. I would assume that if we're looking at and again, this is maybe a great subject for another show, but if we're quantifying the star races, through a graph, a working graph. I mean, I'm with you, Gerald. I mean, the Anunnaki are at the top of the food chain. They're right below the creator of all.
They might not be, actually.
Some of them are. I think the ones that are working with the 7 cycle masters, and I think that's Thoth and Enki, definitely, and probably Isis too. And, listen, they mentioned who they were. There was Isis and Osiris and
Anu, right? Anu's there.
Yeah, they mentioned when you get through the Duat, when the 12 houses that were there, the beings that were in there, and who was guarding what. So these are some of them are the old Egyptian gods, okay?
Right, Osiris. Yeah.
Some of them are clearly working very closely with whoever these cycle masters are that are not Anunnaki. These are a higher dimension than even they are.
Yes.
So what dimension? What dimension? Let me put you on the spot. Are they 6th, 7th?
Well, they tell you what dimension they are. They tell you they go from 3 to 9.
Right. So, but those specific ones.
3. No, so all of those dimensional realities, the reason they're in charge of our dimension is because those are axes in our chakras that are available to us.
Right.
The number 3 maps to your first chakra, and number 9 maps to your 7th chakra.
So the cycle masters, the 9 cycle masters, they would be at the 9th level, I would assume, correct?
Well, I think the 9th cycle master would probably be at the same dimensional level. When you read at the 9th level in the Emerald tablets, if you look at my holographic,
for sure.
The 9th level was where the creator of all existed alone. Remember? So these cycle masters have to be direct agents of the creator of all.
So they're right below.
Higher than the Anunnakis and most other races too.
And here's a really amazing aspect to look at. We look at ancient Atlantis and how Thoth talks about how Atlantis was this utopian civilization who became corrupted by these darker ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I want to direct to some of Gerald's fantastic writing where he talks about how the Nibiru civilization themselves may have been a great utopian advanced creator of all civilization who then became also corrupted just like Atlantis and the Earth by this darker side. And that's why we still retain this divinity within the Anunnaki on this fragmented level from Enki, Ningshita, all the way up through every aspect of that light side. But then we see branching out past Anu, we see Enlil and that whole side, and it turns a much darker road. I see these 2 divergent sides of the Nibiru ancient genealogy timetables. It's really interesting, isn't it, Gerald?
Yeah, the one that really just kind of comes to my mind right now that I really never knew that much about Anu, other than his interaction with the Adapa during the Adapa tale.
Right.
Yeah.
He shows up a little bit in the Atrahasis, where he seems to be on the side of the miners, where he
right.
But when you go to the city of Ur, and this is like a darker side of him that I do not get.
Yeah.
It's clear that Anu and Enlil were in a council meeting, and they decided to destroy the city of Ur, where Nanar, his son, was living with all these people. What justification could you have for that kind of genocide?
I think it was just to get rid of the primitive workers.
But why? What was special about him? How could you justify just saying, okay, you're gone, and to be that callous toward the humans? So I have a different opinion of Anu because of that, and I've never been able to get past that.
It seems like Nibiru and the people there became a military commander civilization rather than one that was based on kind of the collective evolution of its species. And that really hierarchy structure shows itself in our own kingship that then took over on the Earth, I think.
I think what you saw in the movie Battlefield Earth,
Right,
was very accurate in how those Anunnaki beings were shown relating to humans. I think that was actually some of them, especially the ones that treated them as primitive worker slaves. That, you know,
look at the way the natives got treated here. You know, I mean, they got slaughtered like
shit.
Worse than animals.
And I want to say, having lived in a different country now for a while, I'm telling you what, there's a very soft place in my heart for what's been done to these people here.
For the indigenous,
Me too.
Not only the indigenous, but everybody that has been subsumed under the sword and their culture taken away, and they've been caught up. Listen, there's nobody speaking Mayan.
Right. You're right.
Here. They've been wiped out. They're speaking the language of the conquerors. Their rituals and customs and their religion are all given to them by the conquerors.
Such a sad
These
story.
are enslaved people. And listen, it's sad. It's really sad.
It really is.
Well, in fact, Gerald, it's so funny. You're so right. When I went down to the pyramids, north of Tulum, the giant, massive one, and I took all those pictures back in November of last year before you and I knew each other. But just speaking to them, and I think it's the Toltecs. I think it was the Toltecs of that pyramid. There are very few of them, but they are so conditioned. And you're right. They come from an inculcated mindset of, because I was talking to them about who their forefathers and their ancestors were, and no, sir, there's no aliens or there's no advanced species. We were just a small indigenous pygmy group. Yeah, it's truly sad what has been done to them.
Yeah, it really is. And some of them, there's a lot of waking up going on in Mexico. At least they've disclosed.
I see that too.
But at the same time, when you look at where the general consciousness is, because of, and I'm going to say it right now, and Mauro Bellino will agree with me, is what the Papa, the Catholic Church, has done to this country is disgusting. It makes me sick to see how disempowered they've been spiritually because of that organization.
Yeah.
And they target poor countries because
I know, man.
When the education level is low, it's easy to get victims. That's how I see it.
I want to throw in one more thing about CERN, and because you brought up a good point, Gerald, and I want to ask your opinion on this. If the Anunnaki had the technology, wormhole type technology, wouldn't they also have the technology to move the planet, create a wormhole, move the planet from point A to point B, keep it at a certain location? Now, here's why I'm going this route, because if you really think about how Nibiru has this orbit where it causes mass chaos with all these other planets, I would think that it would be chaos on Nibiru too. I mean, there's got to be just as much destruction going on there. So maybe they've got some type of tech, if this is all in play, that they can actually just move it from point A to point B.
There are a lot of people that believe that, Rex.
Well, in Enki's message, he says he's messing with the magnetic flux of the Earth to counteract the perturbations caused by Nibiru. Is that true?
And he says for the first time, too.
That's why Matt actually believes we're not all going to die.
That's right.
Matt?
Well, you listen, I think Nibiru has come by how many times before, and the Earth is still here, and there's still
every 3,600 years, right?
We're not all going to die. There's going to be cataclysms, okay? But that's just part of the nature of the reality of this.
It was a what do you call it? A metaphor. It wasn't. I know we never all die. Everybody survives. I mean, a fraction survive always. But yeah, I mean, we don't know. I mean, there's so much stuff going on right now.
Well, Enki tells us to understand who we are.
Right.
What our mission is, why we're here, where we're going. And when you do that, listen, there is no external thing that could ever frighten you.
Exactly.
Do not cower before
energy, that's right, because your energy is eternal.
Well,
you're only an avatar here and having a material experience. Well, you're going to go on after this.
I still think if we look at just the last 100 years or last 120 years, and we all talked about this on the last show, but I think the proof that things are changing is that we haven't nuked ourselves into oblivion, and the nukes haven't been allowed to go off or land or detonate. Not to say that they still can't. Obviously we have Albert Pike, looming in the background in his story, and the war to end all wars and the war to end all religions, and it's always a possibility. But you know, I want to, maybe I'm hoping beyond hope, but I really do want to believe that there are ulterior forces and motives in the background preventing humanity or sapiens from destroying itself. And
Absolutely.
we definitely know that we have. I mean, World War I was a war of disease and starvation and mass death and casualty. And then right after World War I, we had the Spanish flu. And then right after the Spanish flu, we had World War II. You know, and we had the Stalin purge, and we had Hitler. And we've just been killing each other and killing ourselves and destroying ourselves for millennia. And now, all of a sudden, it's not happening. Yes, there's still skirmishes, and yes, there's still hundreds of thousands of people dying in countries, but we're not exterminating ourselves at a level that we once did.
And it's like different hands that have been in play, right? You talk about that chess match using humanity. I see that chess match as determining where our timeline will go. So it's a chess match to say we're going to play the game this way to push humanity into this outcome, whereas we're going to push it this outcome. And I see Earth in this prison planet of humans in this place. This learning aspect of duality that we're going through is being propelled by the idea that we should go one direction or another based on the interest of whatever faction at hand has the controlling view of us. Gerald talks all the time about how we're reaching this zodiacal house change, and maybe that's the whole purpose, and how our history is directly lining up with these rulers of us. And so if we're getting this zodiacal house change, and then the Mayans also predicted consciousness would reach its greatest place in this certain time, then they clearly knew that during these zodiacal house periods, consciousness wouldn't be able to raise itself. And so maybe these zodiacal house periods are pre-planned all along, and it's known about. It's almost like during them, chaos can ensue, and then once a time period moves on, which I believe we're entering right now, you see all the cards being thrown on the table, and then hopefully a transition to a much better place out of the ashes of what is going to be, I think, a new start on every aspect of our of what we think is real.
I think it's possible. Let me throw in a bonus question. We've been on about an hour and 45 minutes, an hour and 46 minutes now. So let's make this maybe the final question for everybody to answer, and then we can talk.
Jeopardy?
Yeah, we can talk about next week. Because you see this a lot, and you know, some of the people ask this question too on the Facebook wall and stuff like that. Do you guys, any of you guys, think that we'll get to a point where disclosure of whatever it is, whether it's aliens or, you know, alternative realities or whatever, will it ever happen in a way that the masses just become aware all, you know, in a hurry? Is that even possible? What are your thoughts?
I don't think it's going to happen in that way ever. I think we wanted to. I've used to always think it was going to, but the more that I've looked at the constructs of how information is being slowly allowed during certain aspects of our media all the way through our systems, I think maybe there's an idea of where the cat's kind of already out of the bag.
Right, control.
And they've agreed on both ends that for our growth and our stability of energy beings allowed with our truth coming in, we must have it come in increments. Or
I think Ancient Aliens is proof that you're right.
Yeah,
I would say I don't think it's going to happen as incremental leaks of information. I believe that based on our constructs, and we see this happening now, and we can't really put our finger on it, but I think our meat modems are going to be exposed to energy, and it's going to reach a crescendo at a level such that everyone will respond to it based on where they are in their chakras.
I agree 100%.
And I think it's happening.
Happening right now.
I think it's happening incrementally because it's happening on a scale that can't be explained just from an information distribution level. To me.
You're right. No, I agree with you 100%. You know that. We've talked about that. I agree. We talked about that before the show. People are becoming aware. We all have friends that are just coming out of the woodwork, and they're saying, my God, I don't even know why I know this, but what you're saying resonates so deep with me. I watch your guys' shows. I read the stuff that you guys post on your Facebook, blah, blah, blah. And it just, you're right. It's like once the awareness, I'll give Matt's praise. Once the awareness of the awareness occurs in your chakras, in your mind, in your antenna, your energy being, everything changes.
Mm-hmm.
Awareness.
Yeah, and you're just now this tuned, not detuned, tuned meat modem to a frequency that you never really realized you had.
but there's a time period that it has to follow. I mean, yes, it is leaps, and especially in terms of if you look at an enormous gap of time that we've had humanity. But I mean, what I mean is like all disclosure occurring in like a week. I think what we're going to see is pieces, because truth is like an onion, right? It's all just layers of truth. And so people aren't going to just wake up to the fact that there's a Star Wars galaxy out there that we're part of. They're going to wake up to the fact that we're conscious energy beings first. And then they're going to wake up to the fact that we're being maybe controlled by a darker aspect. But by that point, I think it'll be transitioning at the same time to a better place. So it's not going to be like we wake up one day and everything just crashes down and it's like, the apocalypse, end of days. I think they know that it can't go that way because developing species would freak out if they did that. It would be totally
and religious people would melt down.
Exactly.
Rex, thoughts, Rex? Unraveled, unriddled disclosure immediately, or just controlled delivery as we're seeing right now?
Controlled delivery. In my opinion, I feel that this dimension that we're in, essentially, this reality will continue to be the way that it is, except for obviously new technologies, new TV shows, new flavorings, etc. I think it's basically going to be the same in perpetuity. There's going to be these little cyclical things that take place with, like I said, technologies, yet I don't think they're ever going to fully expose the ET agenda. I think they're always going to give carrots at the end of the sticks to make people think that they are going to disclose and that they are going to wake up, and then one day we're going to have this ability to shoot laser beams out of our eyeballs and fly with our hands all the way up to Pluto. But I don't think that that's going to happen, man. I think that we're in this makeup that we're in. If it is the Matrix, this simulation is designed. This is like a boot camp. You make it through this, then that next level, hey, maybe you do have the possibility to fly to Pluto with your hands and shoot people with lasers out of your eyeballs and stuff like that if they mess with you. But I just don't see it in this specific makeup. That's my opinion.
Right. Agreed. I agree. I mean, Gerald, thoughts?
I think we're going to get surprised. I think they're trying to cull you as quickly as they can because they know even though they hit you with frequencies and hit you with fluoride, dumb down your pineal gland, when this galactic energy hits that 8th latent circuit and you start waking up and you don't know why and they start reprogramming all the other circuits, the powers that be will lose control. And they know that, so they're trying to cull the numbers down to the point where they can control no matter what happens to you. But, if we all end up on a path of waking up like Lucy, may the creator of all help them in their enslaving tactics because they're going to get their ass whipped.
No doubt about it.
Certainly everything's going to change. I can absolutely attest and agree to that.
I agree.
Yeah, so.
I agree. Well, guys, this is an amazing show. Let me share the screen real quick here. So for all of you guys watching and listening, again, we thank you. This is our new Facebook group. We're probably going to change it to Decoders of Truth and not Coders of Truth. But if you want to sign up, if Gerald or Rex are fast enough to post these things tomorrow or the day after on their YouTube channel, please feel free. We, of course, will post the URL, but it's just facebook.com/groups Coders of Truth. I think it's just facebook.com Coders of Truth. And find us. And, all you have to do is just ask. It's public, and you just ask for admission, and we'll let you in. Happy to do that. When you get in, read the start here statement so you can understand if you want to leave questions for us on a week-to-week basis. But with that said, guys, I thought that was a really awesome show. Anybody with any final thoughts?
Well, I would like to add just one thing real quick before we
Sure.
close out tonight, or before I get done talking. Be the change you want to see.
Absolutely, man.
That's a powerful statement. And if people would just do that, it would change the world, truly.
I think you guys know my thought. Rex, again, we love you, man. Thank you so much for coming on, and your contribution is most welcome, and you're an awesome dude.
Yeah, agreed.
I really think, of course, I really think that all four of us are doing our part. Is as Gerald said. I've manifested my own reality in the last 2 years that if somebody would have told me 4 years ago what I've done, I laughed at them. I remember standing on stage in my men's group in Santa Monica as, an accomplished realtor and, business guy saying, I'm writing the best book ever written on testosterone replacement therapy and people are going to recognize me for it. And they looked at me like, okay, bro, whatever, and it's happened. And now I reached out to Gerald, who I thought wrote the greatest book ever on changing, mankind and alternative history of really what's going on. I sent him an email. I said, Gerald, your book resonated with me. And now look we're boys. You know, so everything that we consciously manifest or want to manifest or desire to manifest, we can make possible. So Rex is right. Be the change you want to see. Manifest it. Build your relationship. You know, build your bridge. Build your networks. Communicate with people. Bring more and more people into the group. If somebody wants to know about this, stop what you're doing and tell them. Be a teacher. You know, be a connector. I mean, people. But
don't be a preacher, right?
Don't be a preacher, right? People like say to me like, hey man, I'm sorry if these are dumb questions because I know you're so advanced. I'm like, dude, I will literally talk to you until I die. I'll run my mouth for 60, 70 years until my vessel burns out talking about this because this is what I live for. I want as many people as possible to at least have an awareness and an understanding of the things that I feel like we've known or that we know. And again, none of us started here. We all had to read and to seek. So continue to pursue, and you know that's all I got. But I mean, I thought this was an amazing show. I really appreciate you guys coming on. If any of you guys want any final thoughts, feel free to step up.
I just want to say I really appreciate all these high conscious minds. It's not every day you get to sit down with people that can talk about these kind of topics. But I think that everyone can become their own hero, and I don't think anyone should ever let anything stop them on this path. We have this incredible gift of being here in this beautiful planet with this time period to experience everything possible. Don't let anything ever stop you or hold you back. So just follow that and you will find happiness.
I want to say one thing, even though there's 4 dudes here that got together that are doing this, listen, these same issues are just as applicable to all the heroic women that are out there in the world too.
And we're going to have some of them on the show.
We need to eventually, you know, like, and I could name a lot of names right now for people that could be brought on, but and maybe we want to do that because
absolutely next week I think next week we all know we identify one person right now, but there's probably 10. And I'm happy to step aside and let that person come on the show, or even if it's just all 5 of us, I have no problem. I mean, as you guys know, Zoom supports up to 50 participants, and it doesn't screw the bandwidth. So we can bring on as many awesome people as we want, and we can even bring.
Let me throw something out there real quick for you guys too. While you brought that up, is we could also possibly do a live show on Leak Project, and I could do an email alert so that people would know, because you can do live shows on YouTube.
Dude, that would be phenomenal.
That would be awesome. What a great show!
And we can always, and I do them now for Google Hangouts because, as you know, Rex, Google supports unlimited.
Well, what kind of quality you get though, Jay? I did one of those before, and I was like, the audio quality was good, but the video was real crap.
So here's the thing with Google Hangouts. It depends on where people are. It's better to do a live show from like the Leak Project or from here and invite select people. The issue becomes when you have, and obviously we have all of us combined now have pretty big audiences. I think if we did a Google Hangout, it might be bad because if we had like literally 2,500 people watching live, which could be a very realistic possibility because I've had that situation happen, the Google compression codec, the video compression codec is garbage and it'll just literally unravel on us.
Mm-hmm. That's what I experienced.
Yeah, and we don't want that to happen. So I think Rex is right. I think a live feed from a controlled environment would probably be best. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be awesome. And we all know that we have people asking for that now. So that's something we need to think about for the future for sure.
Great idea.
Nice.
Great idea.
Okay.
Awesome.
Sounds great.
Okay. So same time or until next week, if you guys have any thoughts, again, please reach for us on Facebook, both Gerald, Seventh Planet Broadcasting on his YouTube channel, and then Rex's YouTube channel, which is the Leak Project, will have these broadcasts. We welcome you guys' questions and comments. Please come forward.
Matt, don't you give out what's your channel, Matt?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Matt,
I have a Matt LaCroix for a YouTube channel, and you can find The Illusion of Us on there and on Amazon.
Yeah,
and I also have
great book, by the way.
Channel too.
Yeah, it's an amazing book.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, guys.
I don't think I'm going to post these now on my YouTube channel because you guys are doing such a great job of getting them out there. But if you want to read my book, my YouTube channel is pretty big, or it's not nearly like you guys, but it's growing fast now. It's trtrevolution.com is my website. And then, of course, you can just find TRT Revolution on YouTube. But again, we really are excited about these things, and they're growing. And if you want to be on our show and you have something to share with us, please reach out to us through Facebook or through YouTube, and we'll be happy to have you come on.
Because we're a community. Remember that.
Absolutely, man.